I always believed that results spoke for themselves. That if you built something from nothing, transformed a struggling business into an industry leader, and delivered 8 consecutive years of double-digit growth, your position would be secure. That family, especially, would recognize undeniable success. I was wrong. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special. For you! The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Meridian Innovations' executive floor, casting long rectangles of light across the polished concrete. At 6:30 a.m., the office was still quiet, just how Alexandra Chen preferred it. These early hours before the workday officially began were sacred. Time to think, to plan, to prepare for the battles that inevitably accompanied running a rapidly growing technology company. Alex set her coffee on her desk and surveyed her office. Unlike the ostentatious displays of success favored by many executives, her space was deliberately understated. The only personal touches were a small collection of framed photographs documenting Meridian's evolution. From the converted garage where she'd launched the company with 3 employees and a prototype, to the current headquarters housing over 200 team members across 5 departments. The journey from that garage to this glass tower had taken 8 years of relentless work, 8 years of 18-hour days, missed vacations, and sacrificed relationships. 8 years of fighting. For recognition in an industry that still viewed female founders with skepticism. 8 years of proving herself over and over again, even to her own family. Especially to her own family. Alex opened her laptop and reviewed the quarterly figures she'd finalized the previous night. Meridian had exceeded projections again, bringing in $3 million in the third quarter alone. Annual revenue was on track to hit $53 million, a 22% increase over the previous year. The company's valuation had reached $50 million according to their most recent funding round, with 3 major venture capital firms now competing for the opportunity to invest in their upcoming expansion. By any objective measure, Meridian was a remarkable success story. By any objective measure, Alex Chen had accomplished something extraordinary. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father, Richard Chen, Meridian's chairman of the board. Board. Meeting moved up. 8 a.m. today. My office. Mandatory. Alex frowned. The quarterly board meeting wasn't scheduled until next week, and her father never changed important meetings without significant advance notice. Something was happening. Something she hadn't been informed about. The familiar tension knotted in her stomach. The same feeling she'd experienced countless times growing up as the middle child in the Chen family. The perpetual outsider, watching. Her older brother Michael received mentorship and opportunities while she fought for scraps of attention. The academic achiever whose perfect grades were acknowledged with mere nods, while her younger sister Lily's mediocre performances were celebrated with lavish praise. Not this time, Alex whispered to herself, straightening her shoulders. Meridian was different. Meridian was hers, her vision, her design, her execution. Even her father, traditional as he was, couldn't deny what she had built. She took a deep breath and returned to reviewing the quarterly report, adding notes and highlighting key metrics that demonstrated not just Meridian's growth, but its fundamental transformation under her leadership. By 7:15, other executives had begun arriving. Alex could hear the familiar rhythm of the office awakening, the ping of the elevator, the murmur of voices, the hiss of the espresso machine in the communal kitchen. She stepped out of her office to greet her team, maintaining the open door, policy that had become central to Meridian's culture. "Morning, Alex," called Diana Tran, the chief technology officer Alex had recruited from a major competitor 2 years ago. "Ready for the Miller presentation this afternoon? Their procurement team sent over some additional questions." "I reviewed them last night," Alex replied. "Nothing we can't handle. Their concerns about implementation timelines are reasonable, but we can demonstrate our track record of on-time delivery." Diana nodded, a knowing smile playing at her lips. Already 3 steps ahead as usual. This is why we keep winning these contracts. You're always prepared. We keep winning because we have the best technology and the best people, Alex corrected gently. Speaking of which, how's the new development team working out? Exceeding expectations, Diana said. The integration updates are ahead of schedule, and they've identified efficiency improvements we hadn't even considered. That university recruitment program you insisted on has been paying off beautifully. Alex felt a flicker of pride. The university partnership had been controversial when she'd proposed it, with several board members, her father included, arguing that hiring established professionals was less risky. But Alex had been adamant that bringing in fresh perspectives would drive innovation, and the results had proven her right. As they discussed the technical details of the upcoming client presentation, Alex noticed Michael Chen, her brother and Meridian's chief financial officer, stepping off the elevator. His tailored suit and carefully styled hair projected the polished image he'd always maintained. The perfect businessman, groomed from childhood to take over the family holdings. Unlike Alex, who had built Meridian from scratch after their father's dismissal of her business proposal, Michael had been given a controlling interest in Chen Global Investments, the family's asset management firm. He'd joined Meridian's board 3 years ago at their father's insistence, accepting the CFO position despite having minimal involvement in the company's development. Michael spotted Alex and altered his trajectory, approaching with the confident stride of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "Morning, Alex, Diana," he said, nodding at both women. "Alex, do you have a minute? There are some matters we should discuss before the board meeting." Diana excused herself tactfully, leaving the siblings standing in the corridor. Michael glanced around and lowered his voice. "Dad's bringing in some key investors today, representatives from Vantage. Capital and Horizon Partners will be joining the board meeting." Alex's eyes narrowed. "That wasn't on the agenda. Why wasn't I informed? I'm the CEO." Michael shrugged, the gesture deliberately casual. "Last-minute development. They flew in yesterday. Dad thought it best to handle the preparations himself." "What preparations? What exactly is being discussed at this meeting, Michael?" "Strategic direction, future leadership, long-term vision." He straightened his tie, avoiding direct eye contact. "Nothing to worry about. Just be prepared to discuss transition planning." "Transition planning?" Alex repeated, her voice deliberately measured despite the alarm bells ringing in her mind. "Transition to what exactly?" Before Michael could respond, his assistant approached with an urgent message, allowing him to extract himself from the conversation with a vague, "We'll discuss it at the meeting." Alex watched him retreat down the hallway, the knot in her stomach tightening. 8 years of building Meridian had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now every instinct was screaming that something significant was happening behind her back. She returned to her office and closed the door, a rare occurrence that signaled to her team that she needed privacy. Sitting at her desk, Alex pulled up the company's organizational documents and reviewed the shareholder agreement for the 100th time. As founder and CEO, she held 42% of Meridian's shares. Her father, as initial investor and chairman, controlled 30%. Various early employees and minor investors held 15%. The remaining 13% had been allocated to Michael when he joined the company, another of her father's non-negotiable conditions. On paper, Alex maintained control, but board dynamics were more complex than simple mathematics. Her father had always possessed an uncanny ability to build alliances and influence votes. If he had decided on a new direction for Meridian, a direction that diminished her role, he would have laid the groundwork meticulously. Alex opened a secure folder on her laptop and reviewed the contingency plans she'd developed over the years. She hadn't survived in the technology sector by being naive. She hadn't built a $50 million company by failing to anticipate threats, even threats, from within. As the minutes ticked toward 8 a.m., Alex gathered the quarterly report, her strategic growth plan, and the technical documentation for Meridian's latest innovation, a proprietary integration platform that had the potential to revolutionize enterprise. Software deployment, evidence of her vision, her execution, her success. At 7:55, Alex walked toward her father's corner office, exchanging brief greetings with employees she passed. Despite the internal turmoil, she maintained the composed demeanor that had become her professional signature. Meridian's team deserved a leader who projected confidence, regardless of private doubts. Outside the boardroom adjacent to her father's office, Alex paused to observe the gathering through the glass wall. Her father stood at the head of the table, deep in conversation with two men she recognized as partners from Vantage Capital. Michael sat nearby, nodding periodically as if in agreement with points being made. 3 other board members, all longtime associates of her father, were already seated. Conspicuously absent were the 2 board members Alex had personally recruited. Dr. Renata Villers, the former technology dean who had mentored Alex in college, and James Washington, the retired CEO who had become an unofficial advisor during Meridian's early days, the only allies she could reliably count on in contentious board discussions. Taking a deep breath, Alex straightened her shoulders and entered the room. The conversation ceased immediately, all eyes turning toward her with expressions ranging from discomfort to calculated neutrality. "Alexandra," her father said, using her full name as he always did in professional settings. "Thank you for joining us. We were just discussing Meridian's remarkable growth trajectory." "A trajectory we should all be proud of," she replied, taking her usual seat at the table. "As the quarterly report demonstrates, we're not only meeting targets, but exceeding them across all divisions." She placed her materials on the table, noticing the folders already positioned at each place setting, folders she hadn't prepared or approved, bearing Meridian's logo beside the Vantage Capital emblem. "Before we begin," Alex said, maintaining a calm she didn't feel, "I'd like to understand why this meeting was rescheduled and why I wasn't consulted about the agenda or the external participants." Richard Chen's expression remained impassive, the practiced neutrality of a man who had navigated countless business negotiations. "As chairman, I made a judgment call when the opportunity arose to accelerate discussions we've been planning for some time." "What discussions?" Alex asked directly, looking around the table. "And where are Dr. Villers and James Washington?" "They were informed of the schedule change," her father replied, "but had conflicts this morning. We'll proceed without them and update them afterward." Alex doubted this explanation but chose not to challenge it directly. Instead, she opened her quarterly report and placed it deliberately in front of her. "Shall we begin with the company's performance, then? As you'll see, we've exceeded quarterly projections by—" "Actually," Richard interrupted, "we'll be focusing on strategic planning today rather than operational review." He nodded to his assistant, who distributed additional documents. Specifically, Meridian's leadership structure moving forward. The room fell silent as Alex received the document, a comprehensive restructuring plan titled Meridian Innovation, The Next Phase. She scanned the executive summary, her carefully maintained composure threatening to crack as she absorbed the implications. The plan outlined a complete reorganization of Meridian's executive leadership, with Michael Chen named as incoming CEO, effective immediately. Alexandra Chen was to be transitioned to Founder and Chief Innovation Officer, a role with no operational authority and no voting rights on the executive committee. 8 years of building a $50 million company reduced to a ceremonial title with a single stroke. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Alexandra Chen stared at the restructuring document, her mind processing its implications with the same analytical precision she applied to business challenges. The room around her seemed to recede, voices becoming distant as she focused on the carefully worded paragraphs that effectively dismantled her authority at Meridian Innovation. the company she had conceived, built, and grown into a $50 million enterprise. This transition plan, her father was saying, his voice cutting through her concentration, allows us to leverage everyone's strengths while positioning Meridian for its next phase of growth. Alex looked up, meeting her father's gaze directly. And this was developed without any consultation with the current CEO. Richard Chen's expression remained impassive. The board has been discussing succession planning for some time, Alexandra. As chairman, it's my responsibility to ensure stable leadership for the future. Stable leadership, Alex repeated, her tone deliberately measured. Meridian has experienced 8 consecutive quarters of double-digit growth under my leadership. We've increased market share by 27% in the last year alone. Our client retention rate is 96%, well above industry average. By what metric does this suggest instability? One of the Vantage Capital partners, Davis Hamilton, according to the business card positioned in front of him, cleared his throat. Ms. Chen, if I may. Your operational achievements are impressive and acknowledged. However, as Meridian approaches the scale where institutional investment becomes necessary for continued expansion, governance considerations become paramount. Governance considerations, Alex echoed. Such as experience navigating relationships with major investment firms, Hamilton replied smoothly. Long-term strategic vision aligned with market trends. Leadership continuity planning. Alex felt a flicker of indignation, quickly suppressed. Mr. Hamilton, before founding Meridian, I spent 4 years in venture capital. Our current growth strategy, which I personally developed, projects market positioning 5 years forward. And I've built a leadership team with an average retention rate of 94%, compared to the industry standard of 76%. She turned to face the entire board. These sound like post hoc justifications for a decision that's already been made. What I'd like to understand is why. The silence that followed was heavy with discomfort. Board members exchanged glances, waiting for someone else to respond. It was Michael who finally spoke, his voice carrying the practiced sympathy of someone delivering prepared remarks. Alex, this isn't a reflection on your capabilities. You've built an impressive foundation, but Meridian is entering a new phase, one that requires different leadership strengths. Different strengths, Alex said flatly. And you believe you possess these strengths despite having joined the company only 3 years ago, with no prior experience in enterprise software? Michael's smile tightened slightly. My background in financial management and corporate governance provides exactly what Meridian needs at this juncture. The board agrees that my relationships with institutional investors will be crucial for the next funding round. Alex looked around the table, studying each face in turn. The 3 board members who were her father's associates avoided her gaze, suddenly fascinated by the documents before them. The Vantage Capital partners maintained professional neutrality, observers rather than participants in this family drama. Her father watched with the same inscrutable expression he had perfected over decades of business negotiations. I see, Alex said finally. And this decision is unanimous? The recommendation comes from the governance committee, her father replied. A committee that conspicuously excludes the 2 board members I appointed, Alex noted, who conveniently couldn't attend this meeting. Richard Chen's expression hardened slightly. The committee vote was 4-0 in favor. The full board will vote today, but with the support of major shareholders represented here, the outcome is clear. Alex did the mental calculation quickly. Her father controlled 30% of shares. Michael held 13%. If the Vantage Capital partners, who collectively represented about 7% through their managed funds, sided with them, they would have exactly 50%. Not enough to force the change without at least one more vote. This isn't just about titles, Alex said, focusing on the practical implications. This restructuring fundamentally alters Meridian's strategic direction. The Chief Innovation Officer, Role described here has no operational authority, no budget control, and no direct reports. You're essentially removing me from the company I built. Not removing, Michael interjected quickly. Repositioning. Your creative vision is still valued. You'll be free to focus on product innovation without the administrative burdens of running the company. The condescension in his tone was subtle but unmistakable. The same tone he had used when they were children, and he would explain why their father gave him privileges denied to her. Because he was older. Because he was the son. Because he would eventually lead the family businesses. Some things never changed. Let's be clear about what's happening here, Alex said, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. I founded Meridian when no one, including everyone at this table, believed in its potential. I secured initial clients, developed the core technology, hired the key team members. I've grown this company into a $50 million enterprise that's revolutionizing enterprise software integration. She continued, looking each person in the eye as she spoke. And now that Meridian has proven successful, now that the risk has been mitigated and the value established, I'm being pushed aside so my brother can take credit for what comes next. Alexandra, her father said sharply, this is inappropriate. The board's recommendation is based on objective assessment of Meridian's leadership needs. Is it? Alex challenged. Then perhaps the board can explain why Michael, with 3 years of involvement and no technology experience, is better positioned to lead a technology company than its founder and current CEO, under whose leadership the company has consistently outperformed projections? The uncomfortable silence returned, broken only when Hamilton from Vantage Capital spoke again. Ms. Chen, speaking candidly, institutional investors often prefer established governance models. Your brother's background at Chen Global Investments provides a familiar profile that reassures potential investors. The subtext was clear. A male CEO with conventional credentials was more marketable to conservative investors than a female founder, regardless of actual performance metrics. Alex had encountered this bias countless times throughout her career. The subtle devaluation of her achievements, the higher standards to which she was held, the constant need to prove herself, while mediocre men were given the benefit of the doubt. She had fought through it, building Meridian despite these headwinds. But she had never expected to face this same bias from her own family, within the company she had created. I'd like to review the full transition plan before any vote is taken, Alex said, maintaining her professional demeanor through sheer force of will. Her father nodded, as if granting a minor concession. Of course. We've allocated 30 minutes for review before proceeding to the vote. 30 minutes to review? A complete corporate restructuring? Alex raised an eyebrow. That seems unusually rushed for a decision of this magnitude. The timeline is tight because the Vantage team has a flight this afternoon, Richard explained. And the framework has been in development for several weeks. Several weeks. Weeks during which Alex had been meeting with clients, refining Meridian's technology, driving the business forward, all while her father and brother had been plotting to remove her from leadership. The betrayal stung more than she wanted to admit. Alex opened the comprehensive document and began reading methodically, ignoring the discomfort permeating the room. The restructuring was even more extensive than the executive summary had suggested. Beyond the CEO change, the plan reorganized reporting structures to centralize authority under Michael, while systematically dismantling the collaborative leadership model Alex had carefully built. Projects she had championed were deprioritized. Team members she had personally recruited were reassigned. Client relationships she had nurtured for years were to be transferred to newly created roles conveniently filled by executives with connections to Chen Global Investments. It wasn't just a leadership change. It was a complete repudiation of her vision for Meridian. As she read, conversations resumed around her in low tones. Her father and the Vantage partners discussed investment terms. Michael outlined his first 100 days priorities to nodding board members. They spoke as if she had already departed, as if her presence was merely a formality to be tolerated until the inevitable vote. Alex completed her review 5 minutes before the allocated time expired. She closed the document and looked up, interrupting the ongoing discussions with her direct gaze. "I have several questions about this plan," she said, her voice carrying enough authority that conversations ceased immediately. "First, the restructuring eliminates the collaborative development model that has driven our innovation success. What data supports this change?" Michael began to respond, but Alex continued, without allowing the interruption. "Second, the financial projections assume immediate efficiency gains from centralization, despite extensive research showing that disruptive reorganizations typically reduce productivity by 15–20% for at least 2 quarters. Has this been accounted for?" She proceeded methodically through a dozen substantive challenges to the plan's assumptions, highlighting inconsistencies and unsupported claims with the precision that had made her a formidable business leader. It was a masterclass in critical analysis, delivered without emotion, but with devastating effectiveness. When she finished, the room was silent. Several board members looked distinctly uncomfortable, glancing between her and her father, as if witnessing a high-stakes tennis match. Richard Chen's expression had hardened into a mask of disapproval. "These are implementation details that can be addressed during the transition. The board is voting on the leadership framework, not operational specifics." "These aren't minor details," Alex countered. "They're fundamental flaws that undermine the plan's viability. If the board approves this restructuring as presented, they're endorsing a strategy built on demonstrably false assumptions." Her father checked his watch, pointedly. "We need to proceed to the vote. Alexandra, while your concerns are noted, the recommendation stands." In that moment, looking at her father's dismissive expression, Alex understood with perfect clarity. This had never been about Meridian's best interests. It had never been about qualifications or leadership needs. It had always been about maintaining the Chen family hierarchy, with her father at the apex and her brother as the anointed successor. Her role had always been temporary in their eyes, a placeholder until Michael was ready to assume what they considered his rightful position. "Before we vote," Alex said, her voice quiet but firm, "I'd like to remind the board of their fiduciary responsibility to act in the best interest of all shareholders, not just the Chen family. This restructuring represents a fundamental departure from the strategy that has driven Meridian's success to date." Davis Hamilton shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Chen raises valid points about process. Perhaps we should consider—" "The governance committee has made its recommendation," Richard interrupted. "We will proceed with the vote." Alex watched as her father called for a show of hands, already knowing the outcome. He had stacked the deck meticulously, ensuring the absence of her allies while securing the support of investors who valued conventional leadership profiles over demonstrated success. The vote was 5-1, with Alex casting the lone dissenting vote. "The restructuring is approved," Richard announced with finality. "Michael Chen will assume the role of Chief Executive Officer effective immediately. Alexandra Chen will transition to the role of Chief Innovation Officer, reporting to the CEO." He turned to Alex, his expression softening slightly. Perhaps the closest thing to sympathy he was capable of displaying in a business context. "I expect a smooth transition, Alexandra. The company's interests must come first." The company's interests, as if she hadn't devoted 8 years of her life to precisely those interests, as if she hadn't sacrificed everything to build Meridian into what it was today. Alex stood slowly, gathering her materials with deliberate calm. "If the board has no further need of me today, I'll begin preparing for the transition." Without waiting for a response, she walked toward the door, maintaining perfect posture despite feeling as though the floor was shifting beneath her feet. She could feel their eyes on her back, some sympathetic, others calculating, her father's likely already focused on the next item of business. 8 years of building a $50 million company, and in less than an hour, she had been reduced to a subordinate role in her own creation. As the boardroom door closed behind her, Alex paused in the empty hallway, allowing herself a moment to process what had just happened. The betrayal was complete, executed with the clinical precision that was her father's hallmark in business. He had waited until Meridian was valuable enough to attract major investment, then orchestrated her removal to install his chosen successor. Her brother, who had contributed nothing to Meridian's creation and only marginally to its growth, would now reap the rewards of her vision and labor. Through the glass walls of the surrounding offices, Alex could see her team working. Engineers collaborating on code, marketing specialists reviewing campaign materials, account managers speaking. With clients, they didn't yet know that everything was about to change. They didn't yet know that the leader who had recruited them, mentored them, and built Meridian's distinctive culture had just been effectively demoted in her own company. But they would, soon enough. And the news would spread beyond Meridian's walls to clients, partners, and competitors. By tomorrow, the entire industry would be discussing how Alexandra Chen had been pushed aside in the company she founded. Alex straightened her shoulders and walked toward her office, her mind already shifting from shock to strategic analysis. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. She had built Meridian from nothing once before. If necessary, she could do it again. But first, she needed to understand her options, and for that, she needed to make a call. Alexandra closed her office door, a rare occurrence that immediately signaled to her team that something significant had happened. Through the glass walls, she could see curious glances directed her way, but the established culture of respect for privacy that she had cultivated at Meridian gave her the space she needed. She sat at her desk, unlocked her computer, and began methodically documenting everything that had just transpired in the boardroom. The exact wording of key statements, the specific arguments presented, the procedural irregularities that had ensured the outcome her father desired. Her legal background, acquired during the 2 years she had spent at a prominent law firm before founding Meridian, had taught her the value of contemporaneous records. As she typed, Alex noticed her hands were steady, her thoughts organized, despite the emotional storm beneath the surface. Years of navigating hostile business environments had honed her ability to compartmentalize, to channel emotion into productive action, rather than allowing it to cloud her judgment. When she finished the detailed account, Alex opened a secure cloud storage account, one not connected to Meridian's systems, and created a new folder titled Transition Documentation. She began transferring key files from her work computer. The original business plan she had written 8 years ago, complete with her father's dismissive comments in the margins, before he reluctantly provided initial funding. The technical specifications for Meridian's core products, developed primarily by her during the company's first 2 years. The client acquisition strategy that had secured their first major contracts. These weren't just documents, they were evidence. Evidence of her vision, her execution, her central role in creating the company that was now being taken from her. Evidence that might prove crucial depending on what path she chose moving forward. A soft knock at her door interrupted her archiving. Alex looked up to see Diana Tran, her CTO, standing outside with an expression of barely contained concern. Alex gestured for her to enter. "There are rumors spreading," Diana said without preamble, closing the door behind her. "Something about a leadership change? Michael's assistant is scheduling introductory meetings with department heads." Alex had known this moment would come, but had hoped for more time to prepare. She took a deep breath. "The board voted this morning to restructure the executive leadership," she confirmed, keeping her voice steady. "Michael has been appointed CEO effective immediately. I've been transitioned to a Chief Innovation Officer role, reporting to him." Diana's expression shifted from concern to disbelief. "That's absurd. You built this company. The integration platform was your design. Our entire approach to enterprise deployment was your vision. Apparently, the board feels Meridian needs different leadership qualities moving forward, Alex replied, unable to keep a hint of bitterness from her tone. Diana shook her head. This is about your father finally getting what he's always wanted, isn't it? Michael running the company while you're sidelined. It wasn't a question. Over the 3 years they had worked together, Diana had become more than just a colleague. She had become a confidant, someone who understood both the technical challenges of their work and the personal dynamics Alex navigated daily. Diana had her own experience with family businesses and the complex interplay of professional merit and personal relationships. The official justification involves governance models preferred by institutional investors, Alex said. But yes, essentially. Diana sat down across from Alex, her expression hardening into determination. So what's the plan? You can't possibly be accepting this. The directness of the question caught Alex off guard. In the boardroom, surrounded by her father's allies, fighting had seemed futile. But Diana's automatic assumption that she would challenge the decision reminded Alex of something crucial. She wasn't alone. I'm still assessing options, Alex admitted. Legally, the board vote is binding. My shareholder position gives me influence but not control. This isn't just about legal control, Diana insisted. It's about who actually knows how to run this company, who the clients trust, who the team follows. She leaned forward. Have you spoken with Catherine Morgan yet? Catherine Morgan, CEO of TELUS Industries, was Meridian's largest client, a Fortune 100 company that had implemented their integration platform across 17 countries. The deployment had been challenging, requiring Alex's direct involvement and several custom modifications to meet TELUS's specific requirements. What had begun as a purely professional relationship had evolved into mutual respect between two female executives navigating male-dominated industries. Not yet, Alex said, considering the implications. The board meeting just ended. You should, Diana urged, before Michael or your father attempts to manage that relationship. Catherine has been clear that TELUS's contract renewal hinges on our continued innovation roadmap, the one you personally presented to her last month. Alex nodded slowly, recognizing the strategic value of securing key client relationships during this transition. If major clients expressed reservations about the leadership change, it would strengthen her position considerably. You're right, she acknowledged. I need to speak with Catherine and our other strategic clients before the official announcement goes out. Diana's expression became more hesitant. There's something else you should know. The integration team has been working on a significant enhancement to the core platform, the adaptive learning module you conceptualized last year. We've made a breakthrough that could transform our competitive position. That's excellent news, Alex said, genuinely pleased despite the circumstances. The adaptive learning capability had been her vision for extending Meridian's technology beyond static integration to dynamic, self-optimizing systems. We were planning to surprise you with a demonstration next week, Diana continued. But given what's happening, you should know that this innovation is completely tied to your original architecture. No one else at Meridian, including Michael, truly understands how it works or why it matters. The implication was clear. Meridian's next competitive advantage, potentially its most significant, depended on Alex's technological vision. Thank you for telling me, Alex said quietly. How close is it to deployment ready? 3 weeks, maybe 4 with proper testing. But Alex, Diana hesitated. This isn't just another feature. This could redefine enterprise integration. It's your concept, your architecture, if you leave. She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. If Alex left, Meridian would struggle to complete the innovation that could secure its future. If she stayed but was marginalized, her brother would likely take credit for work he hadn't done and didn't understand. Alex was still processing these implications when her phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from James Washington, one of the board members conspicuously absent from that morning's meeting. "Just heard what happened. This is unconscionable. Call me immediately." Followed seconds later by another message. "Don't communicate through Meridian systems. Use your personal phone." The warning sent a chill through Alex. James was not prone to paranoia or overreaction. If he was concerned about communications being monitored, the situation was even more precarious than she had realized. "I need to make some calls," Alex told Diana. "Can you quietly gather documentation on the adaptive learning module's development? The original concept notes, the architecture specifications, progress reports, anything that clearly establishes provenance." Diana nodded, understanding immediately. "I'll have everything secured by end of day. And Alex, the team will want to hear from you directly about what's happening. People are already asking questions." "I know," Alex sighed. "I'll address them once I have more clarity on what happens next. For now, please keep this between us." After Diana left, Alex gathered her personal items and laptop. She needed privacy for the conversations ahead, conversations that would likely shape her future and possibly Meridian's as well. The company headquarters, with its glass walls and her father's watchful presence, was no longer a safe space for strategic planning. She left her office, exchanging brief acknowledging nods with team members as she passed. Their curious glances told her that rumors were already spreading. It wouldn't be long before the official announcement turned those rumors into uncomfortable reality. In the elevator, Alex used her personal phone to text James Washington. "Leaving office now. Will call from secure location in 30 minutes. As she crossed the lobby, she spotted Michael emerging from a conference room with two of the Vantage Capital partners. His expression as he noticed her was a complex mixture of triumph poorly concealed behind a mask of professional courtesy. He raised a hand as if to signal her, but Alex maintained her stride, exiting the building without acknowledgement. The spring air felt unexpectedly refreshing after the stifling atmosphere inside. Alex walked briskly to her car, her mind categorizing immediate priorities with the organizational clarity that had made her an effective CEO. Secure client relationships. Document her contributions. Understand legal options. Assess team loyalties. Evaluate the adaptive learning module's strategic implications. 20 minutes later, she was seated at a quiet table in the back corner of Elysian Cafe, a small coffee shop several miles from Meridian's headquarters. She had chosen it deliberately, independent, not part of her regular routine, and with excellent Wi-Fi protected by proper security protocols. After ordering coffee, Alex placed her personal laptop on the table and connected to her secure cloud storage. She continued transferring and organizing key documents, not just technical specifications and business plans, but emails documenting critical decisions, presentations she had delivered to major clients, and performance metrics demonstrating Meridian's success under her leadership. It wasn't just about building a case, it was about reclaiming her narrative, ensuring that her contribution to Meridian couldn't be minimized or erased once she no longer controlled the company's official communications. When her coffee arrived, Alex checked the time and then called James Washington on her personal phone. "Alexandra," he answered immediately. "I'm appalled by what Richard has done. Walk me through exactly what happened this morning." Alex provided a concise but detailed account of the board meeting, James's experience as a former CEO, allowing him to quickly grasp both the procedural irregularities and the strategic implications. "This was meticulously planned," James said, when she finished. "The absence of your allies, the presence of the investment partners, the compressed timeline for review. Classic ambush tactics." "I recognize the playbook," Alex confirmed. "What I don't understand is why now? Meridian is performing exceptionally well. Our valuation has never been higher. Why risk destabilizing the company with a leadership change? James was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. This may relate to discussions happening beyond Meridian. There have been rumors about Chen Global Investments facing liquidity challenges. Several major investments have underperformed significantly. Alex frowned, connecting dots she hadn't previously considered. You think my father needs Meridian's success to shore up other parts of the family business? It's a theory worth exploring, James replied. Richard has always viewed Meridian as just one component of the Chen portfolio, not as the independent entity you've tried to build. The revelation shifted Alex's understanding of the morning's events. This wasn't just about family hierarchy or her father's traditional views on succession. It was about control of a valuable asset at a moment when other assets might be faltering. That would explain the urgency and the involvement of Vantage Capital, Alex said, thinking aloud. If my father is positioning for a significant capital infusion, having Michael in charge gives him more direct control over Meridian's resources. Precisely, James confirmed, which makes your next moves critically important. What are you considering? Alex took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. I have 3 potential paths. 1. Accept the new role, work within the constraints, and try to protect what I've built from within. 2. Challenge the restructuring legally, focusing on the procedural irregularities and potential breach of fiduciary duty. 3. Walk away entirely and start something new. Each has significant implications, James noted. What's your instinct? My instinct is to fight, Alex admitted. But I need to be strategic, not reactive. Fighting the wrong way could damage Meridian itself, hurt the team I've built, compromise the client relationships I've nurtured. James was quiet for a moment. There may be a 4th option you haven't considered, one that leverages external validation of your contribution. What do you mean? Before making any definitive decisions, I suggest you speak with Catherine Morgan at TELUS and possibly Jacob Friedman at Nexus Systems. Jacob was the CTO of another major client who had worked closely with Alex on their implementation. Diana suggested the same regarding Catherine, Alex said. But why Jacob specifically? Because both Catherine and Jacob are on the selection committee for the Westridge Innovation Award, James replied. The finalists are being notified this week. Alex's pulse quickened. The Westridge Award was the most prestigious recognition in enterprise technology, acknowledging not just commercial success, but transformative approaches that redefined industry standards. Meridian had submitted their integration platform for consideration, but with hundreds of companies competing, Alex had considered it a long shot. You think Meridian is a finalist? She asked, careful not to assume. I have reliable information that Meridian isn't just a finalist, James said, his tone suggesting he was choosing his words deliberately. Meridian, specifically, the architecture you personally designed, is the frontrunner. The implications were immediately clear. If Meridian won the Westridge Award, it would be impossible for her father and brother to minimize her contribution. The timing couldn't be more significant. The announcement is scheduled for next Friday, James continued, which gives you a narrow window to position yourself accordingly. Alex's mind was already racing with possibilities. This changes things considerably. Thank you, James. One more piece of information you should have, James added. Dr. Villers and I weren't casually excluded from this morning's meeting. We were deliberately misinformed about the time. I received a call last night claiming the meeting had been postponed until next week. The deliberate deception further confirmed what Alex had suspected. Her father had methodically ensured her allies would be absent for the critical vote. I appreciate you telling me this, Alex said. It establishes a pattern of bad faith actions that could be relevant if this moves toward legal remedy. Indeed, James agreed. Now, regarding your next steps, I suggest you prioritize documenting everything while memories are fresh, securing key client relationships, and assessing where team loyalties truly lie. And Alexandra. Don't underestimate your value in this equation. You built Meridian. Without you, its future is far from certain. As their call concluded, Alex sat back in her chair, processing this new information. The Westridge Award could change everything, providing external, indisputable validation of her central role in Meridian's success at precisely the moment her father and brother were attempting to diminish it. For the first time since the boardroom confrontation, Alex felt a spark of something beyond strategic calculation, something that felt remarkably like hope. She opened her contacts list and scrolled to Catherine Morgan's name. It was time to make the call that might change everything. Alexandra's fingers hovered over Catherine Morgan's contact information on her phone. This call would be pivotal, not just for managing an important client relationship during a leadership transition, but potentially for reshaping the narrative her father and brother were attempting to construct. She paused, recognizing that emotion might compromise effectiveness. Taking a deep breath, Alex organized her thoughts methodically, as she would before any high-stakes client interaction. She needed to be strategic, not just reactive. Before calling Catherine, Alex opened her laptop and created a new document titled Client Impact Assessment. She began mapping out Meridian's key client relationships, categorizing them by several factors: revenue contribution, strategic importance, personal relationship strength, and primary contact point within Meridian. The pattern became immediately clear as she worked through the list. The most significant client relationships, those representing over 70% of Meridian's recurring revenue, were primarily managed by Alex herself. These weren't just transactional relationships, they were strategic partnerships built on trust and consistent delivery of value. Many had been secured through her personal network and maintained through her direct involvement in solving complex implementation challenges. Michael, despite his 3 years at the company, had minimal client contact. His focus had been internal financial management and investor relations, important functions certainly, but disconnected from the client relationships that formed Meridian's lifeblood. Alex documented this pattern meticulously, supplementing her analysis with specific examples. The weekend she had personally debugged a critical integration issue for Nexus Systems. The customized implementation strategy she had developed for TELUS Industries that had become a case study in enterprise deployment. The 3-month collaboration with Horizon Technologies that had resulted in a joint patent application. These weren't just anecdotes. They were evidence of her irreplaceable role in Meridian's success. Evidence that would become critically important in the conversations ahead. With this documentation complete, Alex felt prepared to make the call. She selected Catherine's number, composing herself as the phone rang. "Alex, perfect timing," Catherine answered, her characteristic directness immediately apparent. "I was about to call you. We've been reviewing the implementation metrics from the Asian expansion, and the results are exceptional. Your team has outperformed every projection." "I'm glad to hear that," Alex replied, momentarily thrown by the positive opening but quickly refocusing. "Catherine, something significant has happened at Meridian that you should be aware of directly from me, rather than through formal channels." There was a brief pause before Catherine responded, her tone shifting to cautious alertness. "I'm listening." "The board voted this morning to restructure Meridian's executive leadership," Alex explained, maintaining professional composure. "My brother Michael has been appointed CEO, effective immediately. I've been moved to a Chief Innovation Officer role, reporting to him." The silence that followed lasted several seconds longer than a typical conversational pause, a clear indication of Catherine's surprise. "That's unexpected," Catherine finally said, her careful word choice revealing more than a more emotional response would have. "Particularly given Meridian's current trajectory and the success of our implementation. May I ask what prompted this change?" Officially, the board believes Meridian requires different leadership qualities as we scale, Alex replied, sticking to verifiable facts rather than assumptions. The restructuring coincides with discussions about a significant new investment round with Vantage Capital. I see, Catherine said, in a tone suggesting she understood the subtext perfectly. As one of the few female CEOs in a Fortune 100 company, Catherine had navigated her share of gender-biased boardroom politics. And the integration platform roadmap we discussed last month? The one that's central to our 5-year digital transformation. Strategy? The question was precisely what Alex had hoped for. Immediate concern about the business implications rather than polite acknowledgement of a personnel change. That's one reason I wanted to speak with you directly, Alex said. The roadmap we developed remains my vision for the platform's evolution. In my new role, I'll continue advocating for that direction, but I wanted you to be aware that ultimate decision authority now rests with different leadership. Leadership with significantly less understanding of enterprise integration architecture, Catherine noted, not phrasing it as a question. That would be an accurate assessment, Alex confirmed, allowing Catherine to draw her own conclusions without making disparaging statements about her brother or father. Catherine was quiet for a moment, then spoke with the decisive clarity that had marked her own rise to corporate leadership. Alex, TELUS selected Meridian specifically because of your architectural approach and implementation methodology. Our contract renewal decisions will be based on continuity of that vision. I hope you'll communicate that clearly to Meridian's new leadership. The implicit support was exactly what Alex needed. A major client signaling that Meridian's value proposition was inextricably linked to her continued influence. I appreciate your directness, Alex said. And speaking of our ongoing collaboration, I understand the Westridge Innovation Award finalists are being notified this week. Has the committee completed their evaluations? The slight shift in conversation. Rhythm told Alex that Catherine was recalibrating, recognizing the strategic implications of the question. The committee's deliberations are confidential until the formal announcement, Catherine replied carefully. However, I can say that revolutionary approaches to enterprise integration featured prominently in our discussions. The announcement will be made next Friday at the Westridge Summit. It wasn't an explicit confirmation, but it aligned with what James had indicated. Meridian was likely not just a finalist, but a frontrunner for the industry's most prestigious recognition. I look forward to the announcement, Alex said. Will you be attending the summit? I'm delivering the keynote address, Catherine confirmed. Which reminds me, the organizing committee requested your participation in the Enterprise Innovation panel. Given this morning's developments, should I inform them of a change in Meridian's representation? The question offered a perfect opening. I would still very much like to participate, Alex replied. The panel aligns well with my new focus on innovation leadership. Excellent, Catherine said, and Alex could hear the subtle smile in her voice. The panel has significant visibility. Several major industry publications will be covering it, along with the awards ceremony. The implication was clear. The Westridge Summit would provide a high-profile platform for Alex to reassert her technological leadership at precisely the moment her role was being diminished internally. Whether by design or fortunate coincidence, Catherine was offering tactical support. Before I let you go, Catherine added, I should mention that our implementation team has documented the critical role your personal intervention played in resolving the Asia-Pacific deployment challenges. The report specifically notes that your architectural insights prevented a potential 7-figure loss in productivity. I'll make sure that report reaches appropriate parties at Meridian. Thank you, Catherine, Alex said, genuinely appreciative of both the recognition and the strategic assistance. I value our partnership and look forward to seeing you at the summit. After ending the call, Alex sat back, processing the interaction. Catherine's support was significant, not just personally validating, but strategically valuable. If TELUS Industries, Meridian's largest client, explicitly linked their continued business to Alex's vision and involvement, it created powerful leverage against her marginalization. Her phone buzzed with an incoming email. It was from Diana, with the subject line, "Secure Documentation, Adaptive Learning Module." The message was brief. "Everything you requested is in the encrypted folder. Access details by separate channel. Team is asking questions. Need guidance on communication approach." Before Alex could respond, a text message arrived from a number she didn't recognize. "This is Dr. Villers. James suggested I contact you directly. Need to speak urgently about this morning's board action. Available now if you can talk." The momentum was building faster than Alex had anticipated. Dr. Renata Villers was not only a board member, but a respected technology leader whose endorsement carried significant weight in the industry. Her outreach, combined with Catherine's implicit support and Diana's secured documentation, was creating a foundation for potential countermoves. Alex sent a quick reply to Dr. Villers with her current location, then turned her attention to the encrypted folder Diana had prepared. Using the access credentials Diana had texted separately, Alex opened the comprehensive documentation of the adaptive learning module's development. The material was even more compelling than she had hoped. The folder contained her original concept notes from 18 months earlier, architectural specifications in her distinctive notation style, and a complete development timeline showing her ongoing guidance of the project. Most significantly, it included video recordings of 3 critical technical review sessions, where Alex had resolved fundamental design challenges that had stalled the development team. This wasn't just evidence of her contribution. It was irrefutable, proof that the innovation potentially transforming Meridian's market position was fundamentally her creation. As Alex reviewed the materials, she received another email, this one from Jacob Friedman at Nexus Systems, with the subject line, "Meridian Implementation Review and Strategic Partnership Discussion." The timing seemed unlikely to be coincidental, given her conversation with James about Jacob's role on the Westridge Award Committee. Opening the email, Alex found a formal business communication with a critically important subtext. Jacob was requesting a meeting to discuss both their current implementation and a potential expanded partnership, specifically requesting Alex's personal involvement, due to the integral role your architectural insights played in our successful deployment. Like Catherine, Jacob was signaling continued confidence in Alex herself, separate from her formal position within Meridian. The email concluded with a pointed reference to the upcoming Westridge Summit and a request to connect there to discuss recognition of truly innovative approaches to enterprise integration challenges. The pattern was becoming clear. Key industry leaders were rallying to acknowledge Alex's contribution precisely when her father and brother were attempting to diminish it. This wasn't coordinated support. These were independent recognitions of her value from people with the professional judgment to recognize genuine innovation. Alex's phone rang, Dr. Villers calling as arranged. She answered, prepared for another strategic conversation. "Alexandra, this is unconscionable," Dr. Villers began without preamble, her academic precision giving way to genuine indignation. The manipulation of board procedures alone raises serious governance concerns, but the fundamental misrepresentation of Meridian's innovation lineage is professionally offensive. Alex had always appreciated Dr. Villers' directness. As a pioneering woman in technology who had faced her share of attribution theft throughout her career, the professor understood exactly what was happening at Meridian. "I appreciate your perspective," Alex replied. "I'm still assessing appropriate responses to this morning's decision. Before you determine your path forward, you should be aware of several relevant facts," Dr. Villers continued. "First, the governance committee meeting where this restructuring was supposedly approved was never properly convened. I've reviewed board communication records and found no evidence of required notification procedures being followed. This confirmed what James had suggested about procedural irregularities, evidence that could be crucial in challenging the board's action. Second, Dr. Villers continued, I've been privately contacted by 2 venture capital firms interested in Meridian's technology, both specifically citing your architectural approach as the primary value driver. They reached out to me as a board member with relevant technical expertise, seeking confirmation that your continued involvement was secure before proceeding with investment discussions. This revelation added another dimension to the situation. If external investors viewed Alex's leadership as central to Meridian's value proposition, her father's restructuring potentially compromised the company's ability to secure advantageous funding terms. And third, Dr. Villers concluded, the Westridge Innovation Award Committee has completed its deliberations. While I cannot violate confidentiality requirements, I suggest you prepare appropriate remarks for the summit next Friday. Your presence will be significant. The confirmation, while carefully phrased, was unmistakable. Meridian had won the prestigious award, providing external validation of Alex's vision at the most critical possible moment. Thank you for this information, Alex said, her mind already processing the strategic implications. It clarifies several aspects of my current situation. Alexandra, Dr. Villers said, her tone softening slightly. Throughout my career, I've witnessed too many brilliant women pushed aside once their innovations proved valuable. Don't allow your contribution to be erased from Meridian's narrative. The technology community is watching, and many of us stand ready to ensure proper attribution is maintained. After concluding the call, Alex sat in thoughtful silence. The IEI morning's devastating board decision was being counterbalanced by an unexpected wave of external validation. Catherine Morgan, Jacob Friedman, Dr. Villers, James Washington, influential industry figures were independently affirming her central role in Meridian's success. More significantly, she now had concrete evidence documenting her contributions: the adaptive learning module development records, client implementation reports specifically crediting her interventions, and apparently an imminent industry award, recognizing her architectural innovation. The narrative her father and brother had attempted to construct, of Michael as the natural leadership successor and Alex as merely a technical contributor, was being systematically undermined by objective, external assessment. Alex opened her laptop and began organizing this growing body of evidence into a coherent framework. This wasn't just about defending her position. It was about establishing an undeniable record of her role in creating Meridian's value. A record that would be difficult for even her father to dismiss. As she worked, a notification appeared on her phone, a company-wide email from Michael Chen announcing his appointment as CEO and outlining the exciting new chapter in Meridian's evolution. The message included a brief acknowledgement of Alexandra's contributions to date and her continued value in a focused innovation role. The carefully worded corporate communication contrasted sharply with the morning's boardroom reality, attempting to normalize a hostile takeover as a natural transition. Reading between the lines, Alex could see her father's practiced corporate messaging strategy: present significant changes as positive evolution, minimize disruption implications, and control the narrative before alternative perspectives could emerge. Under normal circumstances, such messaging might be effective, but circumstances were rapidly proving far from normal. Alex finished organizing her documentation and checked the time. Just over 3 hours had passed since the board vote. That was supposed to end her leadership at Meridian. In that short span, she had gathered compelling evidence of her irreplaceable value, secured implicit support from key industry figures, and confirmed forthcoming public recognition that would directly contradict the diminished role her father had assigned her. The foundation for a countermove was taking shape, far more rapidly than she had dared to hope. But evidence alone wouldn't reverse what had happened. Alexandra now needed to transform this documentation into strategic leverage, and for that, she needed to make one more critical call. Alexandra knew that evidence alone, however compelling, wouldn't be sufficient to counter her father's carefully orchestrated takeover. She needed allies, not just supporters who recognized the injustice of her situation, but strategic partners positioned to influence outcomes. With this in mind, she composed a text message to Diana. Need to speak with core team leaders. Arrange secure meeting off-site 7 p.m. Essential participants only. Absolute discretion required. The response came quickly. Location confirmed. Harper's Mill private room. 6 attendees confirmed. Harper's Mill was a restored industrial space converted to an upscale restaurant on the outskirts of the city, far from Meridian's headquarters, and unlikely to be frequented by her father or brother. Diana had chosen well, understanding both the need for privacy and the importance of neutral territory. With the meeting arranged, Alex turned her attention to her most crucial call. She scrolled through her contacts and selected a name. Eleanor Zhao, founding partner at Summit Ventures and one of the most respected investors in enterprise technology. Unlike the representatives from Vantage Capital who had attended that morning's board meeting, Eleanor was known for prioritizing innovation over conventional corporate structures. More importantly, she had expressly declined to invest in businesses where founders were prematurely pushed aside. Alex and Eleanor had first connected 3 years earlier at an industry conference where Alex had presented Meridian's integration approach. While no formal investment relationship had materialized, they had maintained periodic contact, with Eleanor occasionally providing informal mentorship on growth strategy and capital planning. Taking a deep breath, Alex made the call. Alexandra? Chen, Eleanor answered, her characteristic efficiency immediately apparent. This is unexpected. I heard rumors about changes at Meridian this morning. News traveled fast in the technology investment community. Alex wasn't surprised that Eleanor was already aware of developments, though the speed of information flow confirmed the significance of Meridian's situation. The rumors are accurate, Alex confirmed. The board voted this morning to appoint my brother Michael as CEO. I've been moved to a Chief Innovation Officer role, reporting to him. Fascinating timing, Eleanor observed. Just as Meridian's integration platform is gaining serious market traction, and, if industry whispers are accurate, just as you're about to receive significant recognition at the West Ridge Summit. The CUR, confirmation that news of Meridian's likelihood of winning the prestigious award had reached investment circles, further validated Alex's strengthening position. The timing is indeed noteworthy, Alex agreed, maintaining professional understatement. Rather than expressing the personal frustration she felt, I'm calling because I believe you might have insights relevant to my current situation. You're wondering about the sudden interest from Vantage Capital, Eleanor said, cutting directly to the heart of the matter, and whether it relates to challenges at Chen Global Investments. Alex hadn't expected such immediate precision. Eleanor's awareness of the connections confirmed James Washington's suggestion that her father's other business interests might be driving the changes at Meridian. That's exactly what I'm wondering, Alex acknowledged. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, weighing considerations that Alex could only guess at. When she spoke again, her tone carried the measured precision of someone selecting words carefully. I make it a policy not to discuss other firms' investment strategies, she began. However, I can share relevant market observations. Chen Global has experienced significant underperformance in their Asia-Pacific portfolio over the past 18 months. 3 major positions have declined by over 40%, creating substantial pressure on overall portfolio metrics. This confirmed James's information, but Eleanor's specific knowledge of the extent of the losses provided crucial context. Additionally, Eleanor continued, several institutional investors have expressed concerns about governance structures at Chen, portfolio companies, particularly regarding succession planning and leadership continuity. The subtext was clear. Investors were questioning Richard Chen's leadership decisions across his business interests, not just at Meridian. In this context, Eleanor concluded, a successful technology company with demonstrated growth and a clear path to increased valuation would represent a significant stabilizing asset within the broader portfolio, particularly if that company could be quickly positioned for either a substantial funding round or strategic acquisition. The pieces clicked into place with stark clarity. Alex's father wasn't simply asserting traditional family hierarchy by installing her brother as CEO. He was positioning Meridian as a liquid asset to offset losses elsewhere in his business empire, potentially preparing to leverage it or even sell it to address financial pressures she hadn't been aware of. That provides helpful context, Alex said, processing the implications. Would you have any perspective on how Meridian might be viewed by potential investors or acquirers if its founding architectural vision were disrupted during this transition? Eleanor's slight chuckle indicated appreciation for the carefully phrased question. Speaking purely hypothetically, enterprise technology valuations are increasingly tied to innovation continuity. Companies whose founding technical leadership remains actively involved command premium multiples, typically 30–40% higher than those experiencing discontinuity in technical vision. The statement provided powerful ammunition. If Eleanor's assessment was accurate, and her track record suggested it would be, removing Alex from meaningful leadership would significantly reduce Meridian's valuation precisely when her father appeared to need that value most. One final question, Alex said. The Westridge Innovation Award announcement is scheduled for next Friday. In your experience, how might recognition of that caliber affect investor perceptions of leadership transition timing? The Westridge carries unique weight, Eleanor replied. It's peer-selected, technically rigorous, and historically predictive of market leadership. Recipients typically experience immediate valuation increases of 25 to 35%. She paused briefly before adding, and those increases are explicitly tied to the recognized innovation architecture and its creators. Any perception that those creators were being marginalized would likely neutralize or even reverse the positive valuation effect. The information was more valuable than Alex had dared to hope. If Meridian won the Westridge Award for her architectural approach, any attempt to diminish her role would directly undermine the company's market value, creating a clear conflict between her father's personal desire to install Michael as CEO and his financial need to maximize Meridian's valuation. Thank you, Eleanor, Alex said sincerely. This provides valuable perspective as I assess next steps. Alexandra, Eleanor said, her tone shifting slightly. Summit Ventures maintains active interest in innovative enterprise integration approaches. If your future plans evolve in directions requiring strategic capital partners, I hope you'll consider a conversation. The implicit offer was clear. If Alex chose to leave Meridian and start anew, Summit Ventures would be interested in backing her next venture. It was both a vote of confidence in her capabilities and potential leverage in her current situation. I appreciate that considerably, Alex replied. I'll certainly keep it in mind as I evaluate options. After ending the call, Alex sat in thoughtful silence, organizing the new information into her developing strategic framework. Eleanor's insights had confirmed that her father's actions were likely driven by financial pressures at Chen Global Investments, pressures that created potential vulnerabilities in his position. More importantly, they had established that marginalizing Meridian's founder and technical architect could significantly reduce the company's valuation at precisely the moment Richard Chen appeared to need that value maximized. It was a fundamental contradiction that could be leveraged effectively. With these insights in mind, Alex prepared for the evening meeting with her core team members. She spent the next 2 hours organizing her documentation, developing potential scenarios, and outlining strategic options. By the time she left for Harper's Mill, she had a clear vision of both the challenges she faced and the unique advantages her position afforded. The restaurant's private dining room offered a comfortable environment for the sensitive discussion ahead. Alex arrived 15 minutes early, allowing her to review the space and prepare materials. Diana arrived shortly afterward, accompanied by 5 key Meridian team leaders: Marcus Wong, Head of Product Development; Eliza Diaz, Client Success Director; Tomas Rajani, Engineering Team Lead; Susan Chen, no relation, Marketing Director; and Robert Park, Head of Implementation Services. These weren't just department heads. They were the essential architects of Meridian's operational success, the leaders who translated Alex's vision into executable strategy and tangible results. Their presence signaled loyalty that transcended organizational charts. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Alex began once everyone was seated and the room secured. "I know today's announcement has created significant uncertainty, and I appreciate your discretion in discussing these developments away from office environments." Diana had apparently already briefed the group on the basic situation, as nodding heads indicated understanding of the subtext. "Before we discuss implications and options," Alex continued, "I want to be clear about my priorities. First and foremost is protecting Meridian's core innovation approach and client relationships. Whatever personal professional challenges I'm navigating, the company's mission and your contributions to it remain paramount." The statement established the appropriate tone, focusing on collective interests rather than personal grievances, despite the clear injustice of her situation. "That said," she acknowledged, "this morning's board decision creates significant strategic questions that affect everyone in this room. The restructuring isn't simply a leadership change, it represents a fundamental shift in how decisions will be made and priorities established." Marcus Wong, who had been with Meridian since its second year, spoke first. "Let's be direct. Michael has minimal understanding of our technology architecture and client implementation methodology. His appointments to date have focused on financial reporting structures, not product innovation. This creates immediate operational risks for in-progress developments. Particularly the adaptive learning module," Tomas added, his engineering perspective cutting to the core technical concern. "That architecture is fundamentally based on your original design principles, Alex. Without your direct involvement in final implementation decisions, we face significant integration challenges." "It's not just technical considerations," Eliza noted, bringing the client perspective. 3 of our 5 largest clients specifically referenced your architectural approach in their contracts. Their primary relationships are with you personally, not with Meridian as an abstract entity." Susan nodded agreement. "From a market positioning perspective, our differentiation is explicitly tied to your innovation methodology. All our case studies, white papers, and thought leadership content feature your architectural principles. Removing you from leadership undermines our entire market narrative. And implementation services face immediate practical questions," Robert added. "Client technical teams are accustomed to escalation paths that lead ultimately to you for architectural guidance. Disrupting those pathways creates immediate delivery risks." The rapid assessment from multiple functional perspectives confirmed what Alex had already documented. Her role at Meridian wasn't merely titular leadership that could be casually reassigned. It was functionally embedded in the company's operations, client relationships, and market positioning. "I appreciate these perspectives," Alex said. "They align with documentation I've been compiling today." She opened her laptop and shared key findings from her evidence-gathering efforts, including client relationship metrics, innovation development documentation, and external validation from industry leaders. As the team reviewed this material, Diana raised the question everyone was considering, but no one had yet voiced directly. "What options are you considering, Alex, and how can we support your preferred approach?" It was the pivotal moment, the point where abstract assessment needed to transform into actionable strategy. Alex looked around the table at these colleagues who had become something closer to partners over years of building Meridian together. Their support wasn't just emotional validation, it was a critical strategic asset in whatever came next. "I see three potential paths," Alex said, echoing the framework she had shared earlier with James Washington, but now enhanced with the day's additional information. Option 1. Accept the new role, work within its constraints, and attempt to preserve Meridian's innovation approach despite reduced authority. Option 2. Challenge the restructuring through governance processes and potential legal action, focusing on procedural irregularities and fiduciary duty concerns. Option 3. Depart Meridian entirely and establish a new venture based on evolved architectural principles. The room was silent as the team considered these alternatives, each clearly understanding the significant implications of each path. "Before you weigh in on preferences," Alex continued, "there's additional context. You should understand." She proceeded to share the insights from her conversation with Eleanor Zhao regarding Chen Global Investments' financial challenges and the valuation implications of disrupting founding technical leadership. She also confirmed what several had already suspected, that Meridian was likely to receive the Westridge Innovation Award the following week, creating a powerful external validation of her architectural approach. As this context registered, Alex could see strategic calculations happening behind thoughtful expressions. These weren't just loyal employees, they were sophisticated professionals evaluating complex scenarios with both personal and organizational implications. "This isn't just about title or position," Alex concluded. "It's about protecting what we've built together and ensuring it continues to deliver value according to the principles that have driven our success. Whatever path forward emerges, I want it to honor your contributions and secure Meridian's innovative foundation." The statement was sincere, reflecting Alex's genuine commitment to the team and mission she had assembled. But it also established the crucial framing for whatever came next. This wasn't about personal ambition or family drama. It was about preserving authentic innovation against forces that would compromise it for short-term financial gain. As the team began discussing strategic options, Alex felt a subtle shift in her perspective. The morning's betrayal had initially seemed like an ending, the loss of the company she had built. But surrounded by these allies who recognized her true contribution and were prepared to support her next moves, she realized it might instead be the beginning of something potentially more significant. Whatever her father and brother had intended by their boardroom maneuver, they had inadvertently created conditions for something they had never anticipated. A founder liberated from familial constraints, armed with irrefutable evidence of her value, supported by key operational leaders, and poised for industry recognition at precisely the optimal moment. The real strategic advantage, Alex realized, wasn't the specific evidence she had gathered, or even the external validation from industry leaders. It was these people, these allies who shared her vision and recognized authentic innovation leadership. They were the true assets that neither her father nor brother could appropriate through boardroom procedural maneuvers. As the discussion progressed toward consensus on a strategic approach, Alex felt something unexpected amid the analytical problem-solving: a growing sense of liberation. For the first time since founding Meridian, she was planning its future, without the constraining influence of her father's traditional expectations or her brother's entitled assumptions. Whatever came next would be shaped by merit rather than family hierarchy, by demonstrated value rather than positional authority. And in that realization, despite the morning's devastating boardroom defeat, Alexandra Chen discovered she had never been in a stronger position to define her own path forward. While Alexandra was building alliances at Harper's Mill, Richard Chen sat in his penthouse office at Chen Global headquarters, reviewing the day's developments with Michael. The space reflected Richard's approach to business: traditional, imposing, designed to intimidate rather than collaborate. Heavy wooden furniture, strategic lighting that left visitors slightly uncomfortable while illuminating Richard perfectly, and walls lined with photographs documenting decades of business achievements. Vantage Capital has concerns, Richard said, his tone clipped as he reviewed notes from a call completed minutes earlier. Their team observed Alexandra's reaction during the board meeting and believes she may create complications during the transition. Michael adjusted his tie, a nervous habit he had never outgrown despite years of executive coaching. She was obviously surprised, but she handled it professionally. I don't anticipate significant resistance. Richard's expression communicated clear skepticism. You've consistently underestimated your sister, Michael. It's your most persistent weakness as an executive. He tapped his pen against the polished desk surface. Alexandra doesn't display resistance conventionally. She builds methodical cases and secures strategic support before making counterplays. The assessment was more accurate than either man realized. While they discussed theoretical concerns, Alexandra was already executing precisely such a strategy less than 10 miles away. What options does she really have? Michael argued. The board vote is binding. The restructuring announcement has been distributed. Her role has been clearly defined. Her role has been defined on paper, Richard corrected. Alexandra's actual influence extends well beyond organizational charts. The key client relationships are primarily hers. The technical team follows her architectural direction regardless of formal reporting lines, and the Westridge Innovation Award nomination specifically references her design methodology. Michael's expression shifted from confidence to concern. You didn't mention the Westridge Award during our planning discussions. It wasn't confirmed until yesterday, Richard admitted. The timing is unfortunate. Industry recognition of Alexandra's specific contribution complicates our narrative about leadership transition being a natural evolution rather than a forced restructuring. Michael processed this new information, his executive facade temporarily giving way to the sibling rivalry that had defined his relationship with Alexandra since childhood. It's still just an award. It doesn't change the fundamental reality that I'm now CEO and she reports to me. Richard sighed, a rare display of impatience with his son. This isn't about organization charts, Michael. It's about perception and leverage. Alexandra built Meridian from concept to $50 million valuation through force of will and innovative thinking. If she receives independent validation of that contribution at precisely the moment we've diminished her role, it creates both narrative challenges and practical complications for the next funding round. Before Michael could respond, Richard's phone rang, a direct line reserved for urgent matters. He answered, listened briefly, and his expression darkened. When? He demanded, then listened again. Who attended? Do we know what was discussed? After another pause, he concluded with, keep me informed of any developments. He set the phone down carefully, his movements controlled despite obvious tension. Alexandra arranged an off-site meeting with her core leadership team, 6 departmental heads, all meeting at Harper's Mill right now. Michael frowned. That's concerning, but not unexpected. They'll want explanations about the transition. Not explanations, Richard corrected sharply. Strategic alignment. Alexandra is consolidating her operational support base, and more troublingly, she contacted Eleanor Zhao at Summit Ventures this afternoon. This information clearly alarmed Michael. Summit Ventures? They're competitors to Vantage Capital. Not merely competitors, Richard clarified. Summit specializes in founder-led technology companies and explicitly avoids investing in situations where founding technical leadership has been sidelined. Eleanor Zhao has rejected 3 potential investments in Chen Global portfolio companies on exactly those grounds. The implications registered visibly on Michael's face. You think Alexandra is exploring alternative funding options for Meridian? I think she's establishing leverage, Richard replied. Whether she intends to use that leverage to challenge the restructuring internally or to secure backing for a competitive venture remains to be seen. Either scenario creates significant complications for our objectives. Those objectives, while never explicitly stated between them, were clear to both men. Chen Global Investments needed Meridian's increasing valuation to offset losses elsewhere in the portfolio. A clean transition to Michael's leadership would position the company for either a substantial funding round or strategic acquisition, providing the liquidity Richard needed while maintaining family control through his son. Alexandra's continued influence, particularly if amplified by external validation through the Westridge Award, threatened this careful calculation. We need to contain this quickly, Richard decided. The Westridge Summit is next Friday. We have 1 week to solidify the transition and neutralize potential complications. What do you suggest? Michael asked, deferring to his father's experience despite his new CEO title. Richard considered for a moment. First, accelerate the announcement of a significant new investment from Vantage Capital. Having their endorsement of the leadership, transition will create perception of momentum and inevitability. Michael nodded. We could announce it Monday morning. Their term sheet is nearly finalized. Second, Richard continued, immediately reassign Alexandra's primary client relationships. Schedule introduction calls with you as the new CEO, emphasizing continuity of service while establishing direct communication channels that bypass Alexandra. Catherine Morgan at TELUS might resist, Michael noted, referencing Meridian's largest client. She and Alexandra have a strong relationship. Then start with more receptive clients, Richard instructed. Create a pattern of acceptance. That makes resistance appear unreasonable. Basic influence tactics. Michael made notes, his confidence returning as they developed a concrete plan. What about the technical team? They're likely to remain loyal to Alexandra given her architectural leadership. Richard's expression hardened. Accelerate the technical reorganization outlined in Phase 2 of the restructuring plan. Distribute the adaptive learning module development across multiple teams rather than maintaining it as a centralized initiative. Dilute Alexandra's direct influence by creating intermediate management layers between her and the implementation teams. The strategy was calculating and comprehensive, designed to systematically isolate Alexandra from the operational mechanisms that gave her influence beyond her formal role. It reflected Richard's decades of experience in corporate maneuvering, where power was accumulated and protected through structural adjustments rather than direct confrontation. And if these measures don't sufficiently contain the situation? Michael asked, the question revealing lingering doubts about their ability to truly sideline his sister. Richard was silent for a moment, weighing options he had considered but not yet articulated. Then we accelerate Phase 3. Position Meridian for immediate acquisition rather than additional funding rounds. I've had preliminary discussions with Nexara Technologies about strategic integration possibilities. Michael's surprise was evident. Acquisition wasn't part of our original timeline. We projected at least 18 months of growth under my leadership before considering exit. Options. Circumstances evolve, Richard replied with the detachment of someone accustomed to adjusting strategies when faced with unexpected resistance. If Alexandra creates complications that threaten our ability to maximize Meridian's value through continued independent operation, a premium acquisition offer becomes the practical alternative. The implication was clear. If Alexandra couldn't be effectively sidelined, they would sell the company out from under her, converting her creation into liquid capital for Chen Global Investments, while eliminating the governance complications her continued influence created. What about the Westridge Award? Michael asked, circling back to the complication that clearly concerned him most. If Alexandra receives industry recognition specifically for her architectural innovation, it undermines our narrative about the transition being a natural evolution. Richard's expression revealed rare uncertainty. The award timing is problematic. Ideally, we would position it as recognition of Meridian as an organization rather than Alexandra individually. But the nomination specifically references her architectural methodology. Could we prevent her from attending the summit? Michael suggested. Richard dismissed this immediately. That would create more complications than it would solve. Attempting to block her participation would only validate concerns about our intentions. He considered further options before continuing. Better to embrace it strategically. You'll attend the summit alongside Alexandra, positioning the award as validation of Meridian's collective innovation capabilities under your new leadership. Michael nodded, though his expression betrayed doubt about effectively claiming credit for his sister's recognized innovation. And if Alexandra uses the platform to contradict that narrative? She won't, Richard said with unexpected certainty. Alexandra has always prioritized Meridian's success over personal recognition. She'll maintain professional composure regardless of her private objections. It's why she's been effective as a leader despite her unconventional approach. He paused, before adding, it's also why she represents a more significant challenge than you've acknowledged. Her commitment to principle over ego makes her both predictable in values and unpredictable in tactics. The assessment revealed a grudging respect that Richard rarely displayed toward his daughter. Despite orchestrating her removal from leadership,
Jak biddenis sed quadili hidisis inas Alexander at he had Kida otretiate questions sapiens dalla economic and tactical adaptability.
As if sensing this comparison, Michael straightened in his chair, asserting the authority his new title conferred. I'll implement these containment measures immediately. By Monday, we'll have established clear operational control regardless of Alexandra's maneuvering. Richard nodded approval, but his expression remained troubled. Proceed with the client reassignment and technical reorganization, but wait on the Vantage Capital announcement until I've spoken with their principals. Again, their concerns about transition complications need to be addressed before they publicly endorse the new leadership structure. This hesitation, unusual for Richard, suggested he recognized the situation with Alexandra presented more complex challenges than a typical corporate restructuring. Despite his decades of experience navigating business politics, his daughter represented an adversary whose capabilities he had perhaps underestimated for too long. As the strategy session continued into the evening, neither Richard nor Michael was aware that the containment measures they were meticulously planning were already being undermined by forces they hadn't accounted for. While they focused on organizational charts and formal authority, Alexandra was building a coalition based on demonstrated value and shared vision, a fundamentally different power base that organizational restructuring alone couldn't neutralize. More significantly, neither man fully appreciated how their actions had liberated Alexandra from the familial constraints that had influenced her decisions throughout Meridian's development. For 8 years, she had balanced her innovative vision with her father's traditional expectations and her brother's professional insecurities. The morning's boardroom betrayal had severed those considerations, allowing her to evaluate options based solely on merit rather than family harmony. In attempting to control Meridian by removing Alexandra from leadership, Richard and Michael had inadvertently unleashed precisely the independent strategic thinking they had sought to contain. They were still playing a game of positional authority and organizational hierarchy, while Alexandra had already shifted to a fundamentally different paradigm based on value creation and authentic innovation leadership. This fundamental misalignment in strategic approaches would become increasingly apparent in the days ahead, as Richard and Michael implemented their containment measures only to discover that the true sources of Alexandra's influence lay beyond their organizational reach. As their strategy session concluded, Richard offered a final observation that revealed more than he intended about his understanding of the situation. Remember, Michael, this isn't personal. It's about organizational alignment and portfolio optimization. The statement, meant as reassurance, instead highlighted the fundamental misconception driving their approach. They viewed the situation as a standard corporate restructuring requiring typical management tactics. What they failed to recognize was that by taking Meridian's leadership from its founder and architectural visionary, they had made it intensely personal. Not just for Alexandra, but for the team members, clients, and industry partners who had invested in her vision rather than merely Meridian's corporate identity. It was a critical blind spot that would shape everything that followed. The meeting at Harper's Mill concluded shortly after 10 p.m., having progressed from initial assessment to concrete strategic planning. Alexandra had been both impressed and moved by her team's unanimous support, but more significantly, by their sophisticated understanding of the situation's nuances and implications. These weren't merely loyal employees. They were strategic partners who recognized how the board's decision threatened not just her position, but Meridian's innovative foundation. As the group dispersed, Diana remained behind, waiting until they were alone before sharing information she had deliberately withheld from the larger discussion. "There's something you should know that I didn't want to mention in front of everyone," she began, her expression serious. "Yesterday, before any of this happened, I received an unusual inquiry from Westcott Systems." Alexandra raised an eyebrow. Westcott was one of the largest enterprise technology providers globally, known for strategic acquisitions of innovative companies that expanded their core capabilities. Unlike many technology giants that acquired startups merely to eliminate competition, Westcott had built a reputation for thoughtful integration that preserved the innovative capacity of acquired companies. "What kind of inquiry?" Alexandra asked. Their Chief Innovation Officer, Garrett Wilson, requested a confidential meeting to discuss potential collaborative opportunities related to our integration platform, Diana explained. The language was deliberately vague, but the intention seemed clear. They're exploring either a strategic partnership or acquisition interest. Alexandra considered this information carefully. Under normal circumstances, such an inquiry would have been immediately brought to her attention as CEO. Diana's decision to handle it herself suggested she had sensed something unusual about the timing or approach. "Why did they contact you?" "Directly rather than coming through official channels?" Alexandra asked. Diana's expression confirmed Alexandra's suspicion. "That's what seemed odd. Wilson specifically requested that the inquiry remain between us initially, explicitly asking that it not be shared with other executives until preliminary discussions determined potential alignment." She paused before adding, "It seemed as if they wanted to explore possibilities with the technical leadership before engaging with financial decision-makers." The implication was clear. Westcott had been attempting to establish a direct channel to Meridian's innovative core, represented by Diana and, by extension, Alexandra, while circumventing the financial and governance layers represented by Richard and Michael Chen. "When is this meeting scheduled?" Alexandra asked. "Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., Diana replied. Wilson suggested a location off corporate campuses, the Innovation Lab at Westcott's Foundation. Given today's developments, I wasn't sure whether to proceed or cancel. Alexandra considered the timing. Westcott's approach had come before the board's restructuring decision, suggesting genuine interest in Meridian's technology rather than opportunistic response to organizational turmoil. Yet the meeting would now occur in a radically changed context, one where Meridian's founding architect had been effectively demoted while still controlling its innovative direction. "Attend the meeting," Alexandra decided. "Listen carefully, gather information about their specific interests, but make no commitments, and don't disclose the leadership change unless directly asked." Diana nodded, understanding the strategic value of information gathering before revealing their internal situation. What if they explicitly express acquisition interest? How should I respond? With appropriate professional curiosity, Alexandra replied carefully. Neither encouraging nor dismissing, but seeking to understand their vision for how Meridian's technology would be integrated and evolved within their ecosystem. The conversation with Diana had planted a seed in Alexandra's mind, one that continued developing as she drove home through the quiet evening streets. If Westcott Systems had expressed interest in Meridian's technology before the restructuring announcement, their interest likely centered on the integration platform's innovative architecture rather than Meridian's corporate structure or financial metrics. That architectural vision was fundamentally hers, regardless of formal titles or reporting relationships. By the time Alexandra reached her apartment, a hypothesis had formed that required immediate exploration. Instead of heading to bed despite the day's exhaustion, she settled at her desk and opened her laptop, creating a secure document titled Alignment Analysis, Integration Architecture Futures. For the next 3 hours, Alexandra conducted a methodical comparison between Meridian's integration platform architecture and Westcott's enterprise ecosystem. She analyzed technical compatibility, market positioning overlaps, client-based synergies, and cultural alignment indicators, the factors that would determine whether a potential partnership or acquisition would preserve or dilute the innovative approach she had developed. What emerged was surprisingly compelling. Westcott's technology stack had evolved in directions that created natural integration points with Meridian's architecture. Their enterprise client base included sectors where Meridian had limited penetration, creating expansion opportunities. Most significantly, their innovation methodology emphasized preserving the creative autonomy of acquired technologies while providing scaled resources for accelerated development. As Alexandra's analysis deepened, she expanded her research to include previous Westcott acquisitions, examining how founding technical leadership had been treated during integration. The pattern was instructive. In 7 of 9 significant acquisitions over the past decade, the founding technical leadership had remained in place with expanded resources and autonomy. The exceptions were cases where founders had chosen to depart rather than being sidelined. By 2 a.m., Alexandra had compiled sufficient evidence to support a compelling hypothesis. Westcott's interest in Meridian likely centered on her architectural approach, rather than merely the company's market, position, or client base. If true, this created a potential opportunity that hadn't existed 12 hours earlier, one that paradoxically had been made possible by her father and brother's attempt to sideline her. As a controlled subsidiary of Chen Global Investments, with Michael installed as CEO, Meridian represented a traditional acquisition target where corporate interests and family dynamics complicated integration. But as the founding architect pushed aside despite creating the company's core value, Alexandra represented a differentiated opportunity for Westcott, the possibility of acquiring the innovative vision without the entangling governance complications. The realization was both troubling and energizing. Alexandra had built Meridian with singular focus for 8 years, pouring her creativity and determination into transforming an initial concept into a thriving enterprise. The thought of separating from that creation felt like contemplating amputation, yet her father and brother's actions had created a fracture that might not be reparable, a fundamental breach of trust that changed the calculus of her options. Before making any decisions, Alexandra needed more information, specifically Westcott's true intentions and whether they aligned with her hypothesis. She composed a text message to Diana. After your meeting with Wilson, we need to speak immediately. Focus on understanding whether their interest centers on the technology architecture specifically or Meridian as a corporate entity. Also assess how they evaluate founding leadership's role in maintaining innovation continuity after integration. With this guidance sent, Alexandra finally allowed herself a few hours of rest, setting an alarm for 7 a.m. to prepare for what would likely be another pivotal day in reshaping her professional future. The alarm proved unnecessary. Alexandra awakened naturally at 6:30, her mind already active with strategic calculations despite minimal sleep. After a quick shower and coffee, she resumed her analysis, focusing now on the specific value she could create in various scenarios, remaining at Meridian in the diminished role, challenging the restructuring through governance processes, or exploring external opportunities that would allow her to continue evolving her architectural vision without family constraints. At precisely 9:17 a.m., her phone rang, Diana calling after her meeting with Garrett Wilson. "That was illuminating," Diana began, her tone suggesting significant developments. "Wilson wasn't subtle once we established confidentiality. Westcott is explicitly interested in acquiring Meridian's integration platform technology and the team behind it. Did he specify what aspects of the technology interested them most?" Alexandra asked, focusing on the critical distinction between general acquisition interest and specific architectural valuation. "The adaptive learning module specifically," Diana confirmed. Wilson had surprisingly detailed knowledge of its architecture and potential applications within Westcott's enterprise ecosystem. He described it as precisely the missing component in their integration strategy. This aligned perfectly with Alexandra's hypothesis. The adaptive learning module was fundamentally her creation, the architectural expression of her vision for self-optimizing integration systems. It was also the innovation least understood by Michael or Richard, who had consistently viewed it as a speculative technical enhancement rather than a transformative approach. "What was his response when you discussed integration methodology and team continuity?" Alexandra asked, moving to the second critical question. "That's where it got particularly interesting," Diana replied. "He emphasized repeatedly that Westcott's acquisition strategy centers on preserving innovative capacity through leadership continuity. When I asked about specific examples, he cited their Novara acquisition, where the founding CTO became their divisional chief architect with expanded resources and autonomy." Alexandra nodded to herself, hearing confirmation of the pattern she had identified in her research. "Did you disclose the leadership changes at Meridian?" "Not explicitly," Diana said. "But Wilson asked directly about your role in ongoing development, mentioning that their preliminary due diligence had identified you as the architectural visionary behind Meridian's approach. I acknowledged your foundational role without detailing the restructuring." "And his reaction?" "He emphasized that any potential acquisition would be contingent on continuity of innovative leadership," Diana quoted. Then he said something, particularly telling, "Westcott acquires architectural vision and innovative methodology, not merely client lists or market share. The human architects behind transformative approaches are the primary assets we value." The statement confirmed Alexandra's analysis with unexpected clarity. Westcott's interest centered specifically on the innovation she had created and her capacity to continue evolving it, not on Meridian as a corporate entity or its financial metrics. "Did he propose next steps?" Alexandra asked, mind already, racing ahead to potential scenarios. "He requested a meeting with you directly," Diana confirmed, "specifically as the architectural visionary behind Meridian's integration approach. But the language was deliberate, focused on your role as innovator rather than your corporate title." This distinction was crucial. While Richard and Michael controlled Meridian's corporate governance through board majority, they couldn't control external recognition of Alexandra's founding role in creating its technological value. Westcott's interest in her specifically as the architectural visionary created leverage that bypassed formal organizational charts. Wilson also mentioned that Westcott's CEO will be attending the Westridge Summit next Friday, Diana added. Apparently, they anticipate the Innovation Award announcement with considerable interest. The pieces were aligning with remarkable coherence. The Westridge Award would provide external validation of Alexandra's architectural vision precisely as Westcott was exploring acquisition of that vision. The timing created a powerful convergence of recognition, valuation, and opportunity. "One more thing," Diana said, her tone suggesting she had saved the most significant information for last. Wilson made it clear that Westcott's standard approach for technical acquisitions involves establishing a new division centered on the acquired technology, with founding leadership taking expanded roles within their enterprise architecture. The emphasis was on enrichment and scaling rather than absorption or restructuring. This framework represented something Alexandra hadn't fully considered until that moment: the possibility of evolving her architectural vision with significantly greater resources and scale than Meridian could provide, while freed from the constraints of family dynamics and her father's traditional expectations. For 8 years, Alexandra had poured her creativity and determination into building Meridian, viewing it as the vehicle for expressing her technological vision. Her father and brother's attempt to separate her from leadership had initially seemed like an ending, the loss of the company she had created. But Westcott's interest presented an unexpected alternative: the possibility of separating her architectural vision from Meridian itself, allowing it to evolve in an environment that explicitly valued her innovative leadership. "Thank you, Diana," Alexandra said, processing these implications. "Did Wilson request a specific time frame for meeting?" "He suggested early next week, but emphasized flexibility to accommodate your schedule," Diana replied. "He also mentioned he'll be at the Archimedes conference tomorrow, the panel discussion on enterprise integration futures. He suggested it might provide an opportunity for a preliminary conversation in a neutral professional context." The Archimedes conference was a respected technical forum focused on enterprise architecture innovation. Alexandra had been invited to participate in the panel discussion months earlier, but had tentatively declined due to conflicting client commitments. Those commitments now seemed less binding, given her changed role at Meridian. "Contact the conference organizers and confirm my participation in the panel," Alexandra decided. "And Diana, thank you for handling this with such strategic awareness. You recognized the potential significance of Westcott's approach before any of this happened. I've worked with you long enough to understand how your architectural vision transcends Meridian's current implementation," Diana replied. "Whatever path forward emerges, protecting and advancing that vision matters more than organizational charts or family politics." After concluding the call, Alexandra sat in thoughtful silence, processing the opportunity that had unexpectedly emerged from the previous day's devastation. What had initially seemed like an ending was potentially transforming into a new beginning, one with expanded resources, greater autonomy, and freedom from the constraints that had subtly limited her innovation within Meridian. Yet pursuing this opportunity would mean fundamentally redefining her relationship with the company she had built from concept to $50 million enterprise. It would mean accepting that her father and brother's betrayal had irreparably altered the foundation of trust necessary for continued collaboration. Most significantly, it would mean recognizing that her true value lay in her architectural vision, rather than her position within Meridian's corporate structure. As Alexandra contemplated these implications, her phone chimed with a calendar invitation: the Archimedes conference panel discussion scheduled for 2 p.m. the following day, with her participation now confirmed. The panel topic seemed almost prescient. Given recent developments, architectural vision versus corporate structure, preserving innovation through leadership transitions. It was the perfect context for a preliminary conversation with Garrett Wilson about the possibility of evolving her architectural vision within Westcott's ecosystem. A professional forum focused on innovation methodology rather than corporate politics. For the first time since the devastating board meeting, Alexandra felt a sense of expansive possibility rather than constricting limitation. Her father and brother had attempted to contain her influence within a diminished role at Meridian. Instead, they might have inadvertently created conditions for her vision to expand beyond anything possible within the constraints of family business dynamics. The realization brought a surprising sense of liberation. For 8 years, Alexandra had navigated the complex terrain of being both an innovative founder and a dutiful daughter. balancing her architectural ambitions with her father's traditional expectations. The board's betrayal had severed that balancing act, creating space for decisions based solely on innovation potential rather than family harmony. As she prepared for the conference panel that might reshape her professional future, Alexandra recognized that the greatest opportunity emerging from recent events wasn't external, but internal. The freedom to pursue her vision without compromise, to create value based on merit rather than position, and to define success on her own terms rather than within parameters established by others. Whatever path she ultimately chose, that newfound clarity would shape everything that followed. Alexandra awoke the next morning with clarity that only comes after profound disruption forces reassessment of fundamental assumptions. For 8 years, she had operated within parameters she hadn't fully recognized, balancing innovation with her father's expectations, moderating her ambitions to preserve family harmony, and accepting constraints that subtly limited her visions. Full expression. The board's decision had shattered those parameters, creating both crisis and opportunity. Meridian had been her singular focus since its inception, her creation, her mission, her legacy. Yet Westcott's interest suggested the possibility that her architectural vision could transcend Meridian itself, evolving in ways impossible within the constraints of family business dynamics. Before making any irreversible decisions, Alexandra needed a comprehensive strategy that accounted for all variables and potential outcomes. She dressed deliberately for the day ahead, choosing attire appropriate for the Archimedes conference panel discussion, while projecting the quiet confidence of an innovative leader rather than a recently demoted executive. At her dining table, laptop open and fresh coffee steaming beside her, Alexandra created a new document titled Strategic Pathways, Comprehensive Assessment Framework. She needed to transform scattered insights and emerging opportunities into a coherent strategy that would guide her decisions over the critical days ahead. She began by defining success criteria, the fundamental outcomes that would constitute victory regardless of specific organizational arrangements. After careful consideration, she identified 3 essential elements. 1. Preservation of architectural integrity, ensuring her integration approach continued developing according to its core principles rather than being compromised for short-term financial objectives. 2. Recognition of innovative contribution, establishing undeniable documentation of her founding role in creating Meridian's technological value. 3. Liberation from constraining dynamics, creating conditions where innovation could proceed based on merit rather than position or family politics. With these core success criteria established, Alexandra mapped potential strategic pathways, each with distinct advantages, requirements, and risks. Pathway 1. Internal restoration. This approach would focus on challenging the board's restructuring through governance processes, leveraging the procedural irregularities Dr. Villers had identified and the external validation coming from the Westridge Award. Success would require securing sufficient shareholder support to force reconsideration, likely involving regulatory pressure regarding proper corporate governance. Advantages: maintaining continuity of existing client relationships and team structures, preserving founding connection to Meridian's evolution. Risks: protracted governance battle that could damage Meridian itself, continuing to operate within family power dynamics even if temporarily successful. Uncertain investor support given her father's controlling influence. Pathway 2. Strategic acquisition. This approach would focus on exploring Westcott's interest in acquiring Meridian's technology and innovative leadership. Success would require ensuring any acquisition preserved architectural integrity while providing expanded resources and autonomy for continued development. Advantages: significant resources for accelerated innovation. Freedom from family business. Constraints: potential for architectural vision to scale beyond Meridian's current capabilities. Risks: Cultural integration challenges within larger corporate structure. Potential dilution of architectural vision despite initial commitments. Complicated transition for team members and clients. Pathway 3. Independent innovation evolution. This approach would involve departing Meridian entirely to establish a new venture based on next-generation architectural principles, leveraging the credibility established through Meridian's success and the upcoming Westridge Award recognition. Advantages: complete autonomy and fresh start without historical constraints, opportunity to implement lessons learned without legacy complications. Risks: significant resource limitations initially. Potential legal challenges regarding intellectual property. Disruption for team members who couldn't immediately transition. For each pathway, Alexandra methodically mapped required resources, potential allies, likely opposition tactics, critical decision points, and success indicators. The process wasn't merely analytical. It was a manifestation of the strategic clarity that had made her effective as Meridian's founder despite constant headwinds. As her analysis deepened, Alexandra recognized that these pathways weren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Elements could be strategically combined or sequenced to create optimal positioning as circumstances evolved. Most significantly, maintaining multiple viable options created leverage that couldn't be neutralized through any single countermove by her father or brother. The Westridge Award announcement and the Archimedes Conference represented critical inflection points in this emerging strategy. Each provided external validation of her architectural vision separate from Meridian's corporate identity, creating foundations for whatever path ultimately proved most viable. With her strategic framework established, Alexandra turned to immediate, tactical priorities for the day ahead. The Archimedes Conference panel discussion would provide her first public appearance since the restructuring, an opportunity to establish narrative positioning before her father and brother could solidify their version of events. More importantly, it would facilitate initial contact with Garrett Wilson in a professional context focused on architectural innovation rather than corporate transactions. Understanding Westcott's true intentions would provide essential information for evaluating which strategic pathway offered the optimal combination of architectural integrity, innovative recognition, and liberating autonomy. Alexandra prepared methodically for the panel discussion, reviewing the confirmed participants and discussion topics. Besides herself, the panel included 2 respected enterprise architects from major technology companies and a prominent academic researcher specializing in organizational structures that fostered innovation. The moderator was Dr. Helen Winters, a former technology executive who had transitioned to writing and speaking about innovation leadership. The panel composition was fortuitous, creating an environment where Alexandra could articulate her architectural philosophy and innovation methodology without directly addressing Meridian's specific situation. This would allow her to establish key principles relevant to her current circumstances without appearing to challenge her father and brother's actions publicly. At 11:30 a.m., as Alexandra was finalizing her panel preparation notes, her phone rang. With an unexpected caller ID, Catherine Morgan, CEO of TELUS Industries and Meridian's largest client. "Alexandra," Catherine began when she answered, "I've just received a rather interesting call from your brother, introducing himself as Meridian's new CEO and requesting a meeting to discuss our implementation partnership." Alexandra maintained professional composure despite the confirmation that Michael was already attempting to assert control over key client relationships. "Thank you for letting me know, Catherine. The board approved a leadership restructuring yesterday that has Michael assuming the CEO role while I transition to Chief Innovation Officer." "So I gathered," Catherine replied, her tone suggesting skepticism about the arrangement. Michael emphasized continuity of service and strategic alignment, but seemed notably unfamiliar with the technical details of our implementation when I asked specific questions about the adaptive learning module integration. This was unsurprising given Michael's limited involvement in Meridian's technical development, But the timing suggested her father and brother were moving quickly to solidify control over client relationships before Alexandra could establish independent communication channels. "The transition is still being defined," Alexandra said carefully. "I remain directly involved in the architectural direction, particularly regarding the adaptive learning module deployment." "That's precisely why I'm calling," Catherine said. "Our implementation team has documented the critical role your architectural guidance played in resolving our Asia-Pacific deployment challenges. That documentation specifically notes that your particular approach to adaptive integration pathways prevented potential seven-figure productivity losses." The statement wasn't merely client validation, it was ammunition. Concrete documentation from Meridian's largest client explicitly crediting Alexandra's architectural approach with delivering substantial value that others within the organization couldn't have provided. "I appreciate that recognition," Alexandra replied. "Ensuring successful implementation has always been my priority." "Beyond recognition, it establishes contractual considerations," Catherine noted pointedly. "Our master services agreement includes specific provisions regarding continuity of technical leadership on critical implementation components. The documentation identifies you personally as essential to that continuity." This revelation added another dimension to Alexandra's strategic position. If TELUS Industries' contract explicitly referenced her role in implementation success, it created legal and financial implications for any attempt to diminish her involvement. Her father and brother couldn't simply remove her from client relationships, without potentially triggering contractual issues with Meridian's largest revenue source. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.